So this is going to be a capital, I'm going to record now. This is going to be a capital hungry breakdown overall on the Federal Reserve, just a bit of background information on it, how it was really formed, what it really does, right? How the US isn't publicly run or even really government run. It's pretty much owned by the Federal Reserve and is a huge debt slave to it, and how this came about. Okay. I know a lot of people know, a lot of people didn't know, but recently when I told a lot of people to watch that documentary, Fall Cabal, it gave a lot of information that people didn't expect about like central banks and us as traders. This intrigues us more because it relates to what's going on in the markets now and how it impacts what we do day to day and overall from like a macro perspective. Okay. So the Federal Reserve was created pretty much in the early 1900s, and it was done legally during a period of recession in the U.S. and extreme economic weakness, where some very wealthy private families pretty much pooled together funding to dictate how the money moves in the U.S. and how growth will go, where money will be spread out, how infrastructure will expand, all that. So pretty much in a very early stage of the U.S. when it was vulnerable, these rich families such as the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, and if you don't know, the Rothschilds have their hand or a major ownership or fully own most of the central banks globally. Okay, this is gonna, as we expand and go into it, it's gonna make sense why countries without central banks get raided. They get like the U.S. ends up going to war with them, and you're gonna see how that plays out. Okay, so to understand this, you have to understand that once upon a time, and I'm talking well before the 1900s, right? Everything was exchanged, goods were exchanged for precious metals such as silver, copper, or gold coins. Gold was of course the very popular one in our time, in our universe, right? It could have well been platinum or something else at the time. We don't know, but it happened to be gold. So gold has that historical value where back in the day, you would go to your local market and take gold coins and exchange it for bread or whatever food item you're getting or some cloth to stitch up some clothing. I'm talking that, like, you know what I mean? I'm talking years ago, well before the 1900s and those times. And then you even go into the medieval times, they were using coins and all that, right? As this developed, just because humans continuously innovate and this same concept is seen to date, you cannot officially take hordes of gold everywhere you go. Okay, so what did they do for this? For a certain amount of gold, they denominated or created a note for it. This is where paper money came into play. Paper money was just a note, just for the ease of access, for the convenience of it, because it's a lot lighter, it's a lot more portable, to represent the gold value it holds, right? You could originally go to a bank, give this note that says it's worth the equivalent of 1 gold ounce or whatever it may be, and you would get that physical gold. Okay, so instead of people and businesses and banks back then, which are very new, exchanging constant physical gold with each other and hoarding this stuff around, you would exchange these notes, right? That's how that happened. You still see this innovation in modern day of convenience, of how people are pretty much just late, like this human instinct of people being lazy and wanting things easier and faster, right? It's the same, exactly. So it's the same thing now where they created credit cards, and then they created now these virtual currencies where you don't even need a credit card. You can just use a crypto wallet, right? It's all for ease of access and more efficiency, blah blah blah. Okay. This pretty much created and led to the gold standard, right? So this led to the gold standard where money was backed by a physical, valued, precious metal, commodity, whatever you want to call it. It had value to it. Cash actually had a value and it related to the supply and the demand of gold. The more rare gold was at the time, or could be because some certain supply was impacted, the more this cash note had value. Okay, but down the road, this was left. The Federal Reserves left this, and you can see this where the Federal Reserve was created in the 1900s, blah, blah, blah. They basically took control of the U.S. money supply, and they would use their funding of being very rich families, these Rockefellers, these Rothschilds, and they would basically be giving loans to the U.S. during this time of recession, except this never ended, right? So no longer was the US dollar backed by the gold standard, right? Every US dollar says it's a Federal Reserve note, right? The 50, like on the top here, it says a Federal Reserve note, where it used to be a silver certificate or a gold certificate. You can no longer take these notes and go to the bank and get gold for it. It doesn't work that way now. Okay? So understanding that basically all the money in the United States, it's an illusion of freedom. It's not actually owned by the citizens or by the government. They're Federal Reserve notes that are loans to the Federal Reserve. That is why the US is in such heavy debt, and that is why the Federal Reserve is always the one who buys that debt. And how do they keep buying that debt? Because they keep printing more and more money out of thin air, and because this central banking system has been corrupt and into our economies like that for the last 100 years across nations, nobody can do anything about it because the ties and the corruption run so deep that there's so many people being like, it's so hard to go against this system. You'll just get assassinated, right? Where did we see that? JFK, right? Kennedy was a great president for the US who wanted to remove being a debt slave, because every time the Federal Reserve is printing more money and they're buying US T bills or US government bonds or US securities, they are putting more money into the US, but they're not doing it out of a goodwill or good gesture. They're doing it to put the US in more debt. For everybody, it looks like they are trying to help the US and giving them more cash flow, but this is all loans at the end of the day with an interest rate that has to be paid, right? The US is forever in debt. Every nation that has a central bank is forever in debt. Whenever you see, for example, let me see if I can find it here, just in the capital hungry. I know some people in here are in capital hungry, like this. I posted. This week, the Fed will buy more than half of the 500 billion in government debt purchases. This isn't them helping because they're so kind. This is money that's gonna have to be paid back eventually to the Fed, and it never does. But the citizens will be the ones that are gonna pay this back, right? It's not gonna be major corporations, and it's not gonna be the 1% paying this. Okay, so basically, by enslaving all these nations to debt and creating this corrupt system 100 years ago, nothing has ever changed. There is whenever there is way too much cash supply and inflation is way too much to handle, you have this bubble created, right? And every 10 or 15 years, this bubble pops. There's a major catalyst in the market. To me, it's not those catalysts in the market that caused the crash, whether it was the mortgage, whether it was the credit or mortgage crisis in '08, whether it was coronavirus now, whether it was what caused the Great Depression back in the day, whatever it was, right? That those are just byproducts of this poorly built, corrupt economy that's meant to keep a small percent of people on Earth powerful for the rest of their lives, their kids' lives, and generations. Like we've seen, like these Rothschilds, these Rockefellers, Bilderberg. Like there's so many of these families, but it's a very small population that controls and dictates everything that's going on in the world compared to the overall population of humanity. Okay, it's extremely corrupt. The distribution of wealth is not balanced at all, right? There's famine, there's homelessness, there's sickness all around our world. Just because some of us on the western side of the world, or you live in a better area, and it's out of sight, out of mind, doesn't mean that there aren't people dying of hunger every hour as we are speaking right now, right? Or somebody getting robbed, or somebody dying of a disease we have the full technology to treat them. They just can't afford it because of what situation they are in, right? Like all this stuff exists, all this poverty, all this famine, it exists. It's active. It's always happening. right? And it's because of this corrupt system that was created over money, power, and greed at the core, right? Extremely dark, evil forces. So people want to say so people want to say when the story is spoken different that, oh, there's the Illuminati against us. Then it turns into, then people say, oh, this is a conspiracy theory. But the way I explained it, it's economy. It's no, this isn't fake. This, like, them buying more debt, them putting it's not fake. The Federal Reserve being privately owned, and it's not a government run institution. It's privately owned. The central bank, the Federal Reserve, that gives money to the US. This is the economy. There's no conspiracy about it here. This is extreme corruption to the core, and everybody given the illusion of freedom, and everybody thinking they have choice when they really don't, right? You really have no power. You have no choice. The Federal Reserve can take 40%, 50% of whatever you own if they were really suffering that bad. If they really needed to get their cash back, guess what? Every single note in circulation is a Federal Reserve note that they can say, we want, as a bank that's funding the US, just like your bank, if you don't pay your loans, they can say, you know what? We're going to take your house. We're going to take this. The central bank can do that on a mass scale. And they've been running the system that way. Okay, so understanding that the central bank, the Federal Reserve, in example for the U.S., is a lot different than the government. They are not one. This is why Trump, in our recent times, in our current events, for us to relate, why do you think Trump always wants to get Jerome Powell fired? Why do you think Trump is trying to drive down interest rates to the negative? He's trying to drive the Fed into a hole, because because when the interest rate is high, every single note or loan that has to be paid back eventually from the US government to the Federal Reserve is getting paid back at a high interest. When it's negative interest, they are paying back less than the loan owed. Do you see what Trump's trying to do now? Does that make sense to you guys? because because every single bill the Federal Reserve is paying out to the U.S. as a whole. Think about the U.S. as one banking client, right? Imagine your bank, you had a loan at 1.5% interest, right? Imagine you, due to whatever reasoning, like Trump is doing now, you got your bank to cut the interest rates on your loans to eventually to the negative. Now the interest is working in the client's favor. Now it's negative 0.25%, 25 basis points. So every loan payment, you're paying 0.25% less. You're paying, sorry, 25%, oh yeah, 0.25 basis points less on your overall payment, right? Does that make sense? Let me know in the chat if that makes sense. So now think about Trump. That's what Trump is trying to do to the Federal Reserve on a grand scale. He's created all these tensions from the trade war to bring all this uncertainty into the markets. You have China bringing the coronavirus to the markets and all that uncertainty, and they've already started to recover from that. And we're going to see the U.S. recover from that. That's why I think the U.S., Russia, and China, they are all working together to drive global central bank rates down, so national debt can be paid back easier, or you can completely get rid of the central banks and say, no, the interest rates are negative. We owe you this much less, and we have these assets to pay it off. We're gonna pay it off. We're finally debt free, and we're taking control of our money now. We don't need your loans, right? It gets rid of that stronghold, because you have to understand, historically, the Federal Reserve and the guys that started all this, they also put their hands in every other industry, right? They also put their hands in big pharma, which controls the flow of medication in the U.S. and globally, and can literally keep people dumb as fucking bricks, can literally numb their body down, empty their wallets. They also got their hands in the food industry, where they want you to eat fast food and fucking put your body and mind to the shitter. They got your mind. They also got their hand in the education industry, in the education sector, right? You can only learn what they allow you to learn, what the limits they give to what you can learn. There's probably a lot of scientific knowledge out there from the old Tesla papers. There's probably a lot of economic knowledge out there that's all hidden from the general public. It's kept for the elite, right? Wouldn't that make Trump, Russia, and President do whatever they want? Whatever they want will be what the people. It's government run. They can't do whatever they want because the people will revolt. They're gonna do what the people need and what the people want, right? Because that doesn't make sense, Lou. Because the central banks have already been doing everything they want. They don't. The China does not have currency manipulation. Where are you talking about that? The U.S. removed them as a currency manipulator last year in September. Why would the U.S. and China team up? The president of China and Trump are very good friends. Very good friends. Okay. Central banks when they have their own issues to deal with as trade war currency. Yeah, like the China is off the U.S. Treasury's currency manipulator list last year. You're slacking, bro. That was last year. That's old news, right? Here, I'll show you. When do you think coronavirus? Okay, so wait. Let me keep going because we're not done yet. Okay, so we see once we pay our debt, what banks will we use? The government banks, the U.S. Treasury. The money will be controlled by the U.S. Treasury and no longer. It'll be audited and controlled by the U.S. government and Treasury instead of the central bank, which pretty much owns the U.S. Okay, yeah, it is. Okay, so now do you guys see this monthly Treasury statement here? So you guys now understand the Federal Reserve, how corrupt it is, right? How they have their hands in every nation that has a central bank, not the Federal Reserve, but central banks overall. How they're privately owned. They make nations their debt slaves, right? And they run on this corruption. You guys understand that? Do you guys see the screen right now with the monthly Treasury statement? Can you guys see my screen? Okay, this is a U.S. monthly Treasury statement. Okay, this is the U.S. budget, the balance sheet month by month. This right here is money in versus money out. The deficit on average per month, bro, what the fuck? Corporate income taxes was minus 2 billion this month. That's fucking crazy. I gotta share this to my chat. Holy. Okay, so anyways, okay, listen. This is the money coming in versus the money going out. Don't worry about this stuff. All right. Look, this is why I'm going to explain to you guys why the US is always increasing their debt. Okay. Because of grants, because of corporate grants. Okay. Now, so the money going out in the US is always fairly consistent. This is just okay. The money and people. This is public information. That just made me mad seeing the minus 2 billion. Listen to this. The money going out month by month on average, the spending the US government does on average is around 350 to 450 billion dollars from income security, social security, military, Medicare, health, blah blah blah. Education's only fucking 13 billion down here because Americans want to keep everybody dumb as a doorknob, right? This is the money coming in from social insurance, 100 billion a month, individual income taxes, the actual individuals in the US, the hardworking single mother who's making 40K a year and has 3 kids, this is her tax going into there, 70 billion. Customs and duties, excise taxes, I have to look into this. Somebody asked, I don't really look at some of these minor ones like miscellaneous, estate and gift. This I don't really look at it, because custom duties I do look at. You know why? Because why do you think Trump was going with a trade war against most countries and tariffing them? What do you think he was trying to do? He's trying to decrease the U.S. budget deficit and their debt month by month, right? Why do you think Trump was trying to get corporations to pay more tax? Look, how come the individual worker as a collective is paying 70 billion a month in tax, but corporations got away in February with minus 2 billion? They actually got money given to them by the government. Do you guys fucking understand how corrupt that is? This is telling you, and you can look at this treasury statement from every month. I remember this corporate income tax, and you can ask anybody who's in capital hungry here, is always lower than the individual income tax. And this is the money earned. This is telling you that these major US corporations like Amazon that are making billions, Microsoft, Google, whatever the fuck, you know what I mean? Not even just in technology, in every industry, from oil, from the food industry, from entertainment, media, whatever it is, all these companies as a collective are avoiding taxes. They're moving their money elsewhere. They launder money illegal, or they launder money legally through all these charities, through all these fucking donation foundations and bullshit, right? Exactly. Okay, so now understand that Trump is trying to do a few things. He wants corporations to pay more tax because it's only fair. If corporations paid their respected tax that they should be paying, the US would not be in debt. That's facts. For example, I was talking about this in the chat. Amazon alone last year earned 85 billion claimed on paper. Okay, if they are paying corrective tax, whether it's whether it's there's a lot of expenses and it's written off, whatever. Let's just say Amazon pays 20% tax. Okay, let's just say they pay 20% tax. That means on their 80 to 100 billion roughly earned, they should be paying alone 15 to 20 billion. Okay, Amazon alone should be paying 15 to 20 billion a year on tax. Just them. And think about all the US corporations in every single industry, in every single sector from big pharma. That tax number alone earned going into the government, right? Should be hundreds of billions. This is the data of last month. Dukshaft, you're a retard. The shit doesn't take place overnight. Because the Federal Reserve, how do you get corporations to pay taxes when they're using legal loopholes? That's the issue. These guys are the corporations that are avoiding these taxes. They are in terms doing it legally, quote unquote. They're doing it legally. This is legal fraud. If anybody else was trying to avoid taxes like this, right? Individuals, the IRS in the U.S. would be on your ass. You know what I mean? But these corporations have billions of dollars, and this goes to what I'm going to talk about now. Why the fuck was Jerome Powell at Jeff Bezos' house party? Why was the head of the Federal Reserve at Jeff Bezos, the CEO of Amazon's fucking house party? He got paid off to make sure this stays as is. That these corporations keep paying no tax. They keep making more money and they keep putting nothing back into the US. They move their money globally elsewhere to keep so the rich keep getting richer. Okay? This is the yearly. For the year of 2020, individuals paid 671 billion. Corporations paid 74 billion. Individuals in the US, go look at how many times, bro, don't waste my time right now. Why don't you research it yourself and check how many times President Trump and the president of China have met and they're on good terms, Putin, Trump, and him. Why you Like why do you think they're making a trade deal together and not going like continuing trade wars? The US didn't lose any the US or China, they both did not lose from the trade war. They're just creating trade deals. That shit brought attention to the media. and it looked negative in the media. They're just making a trade deal. Just like two major corporations would have negotiations with each other before having an arrangement to do business, right? In the media, they made it seem like, oh, big bad China versus big bad US, because they don't want these powerhouses working together like that. They don't want Trump and Putin shaking hands. They don't want Trump and North Korea bringing peace with Kim instead of going to war, right? But in reality, when you look at it from a business perspective, it wasn't really a trade war. It was a trade war in the media that brought market volatility and fear. But it's two major nations negotiating trade deals. This takes time. There's a lot of infrastructure involved. It trickles down and impacts import and export across the board, right? Just like two major companies that are doing negotiations with each other to merge or do business, it's not going to happen overnight. They're going to have disagreements. Okay. In reality, everybody thought Trump was going to go to war and create drama with North Korea, and he did the opposite. Okay. They thought the trade war, there were going to be major conflict. It was going to lead to physical conflict, and they signed a phase one deal. And China already just recently bought huge billions of dollars in U.S. agriculture. They're doing what they said they were going to do in the deal. This is recent news. They don't show that on mainstream media. Look, let's see if I can find. Okay, so look at this. This is why the U.S. is in debt, and they go to 64 billion in debt per year, and this goes into the trillions. Do you guys understand that? Okay, this is why, because these major corporations in the 1% at the top of the corporate world, they pay no fucking tax, but it's a little guy that's getting fucked. Trump wants to increase this and increase customs and duties. Because look at this. How come major countries are also, when Trump said countries are ripping them off on their import and export, it was true. You have major countries as wholes only paying 34 billion in duties when there's so many goods coming in and out of the US, and you have corporations only paying 74 billion. Customs and duties and corporations together is 100 billion, but you have the individual US citizens as a collective paying fucking over $500 million in tax. That's robbery. That's theft. It's corruption. It's built on bullshit. It's built on greed. It's built by these motherfuckers, right? And these rich motherfuckers like Jeff Bezos, they know how to work the system. They know to go to the feds. Don't go to the government. Go straight to the feds. Because the feds are the one that own the US. The central banks are the ones that own the nations. They own them, right? Trump is trying to bring more money and work into the US, right? He's trying to cut the budget deficit, and he's trying to drive interest rates down into the negative so they will no longer be debt slaves to the Federal Reserve. You guys understand everything now? Why he's trying to make trade deals with countries that benefit the US and also benefit the other countries? Why he wants to drive interest rates down to zero and negative? Do you understand that now? Why he wants to free the US from debt? Why he's doing the same thing that JFK wanted to do? Why he always says fake news? Why? No, they're not manipulating the data. The US data is actually that poor, but it's because of the Fed. But why he says they're all fake news? Does that not all make sense now? Why corporations avoid tax, and he's trying to make them pay more tax? And how the US, China, and Russia, Putin, they would all benefit if central banks were removed. Right? If central banks were removed and the US went back to auditing and controlling their own currency backed by US assets, right? It might not be backed by gold, it might just be backed by US assets. Okay? If we go back to that, Trump will then lower income taxes, or the income tax will be lowered. You know what this does for a society on a psychological standpoint? I don't just study the finance side for this, because trading involves psychology as well. You know how much happier everybody would be if they paid 40% less tax, income tax, or no income tax? You know how much more the economy would flourish? People wouldn't think twice. People wouldn't think twice about going out to spend and put money back into the economy. Sales would increase. Restaurants, food, all that shit, everything social, it would increase. People would be in a better mood. They wouldn't be worrying about every single bill. They wouldn't say, no, I don't want to buy that because it's bill. Right? You would have money constantly circulating in the economy in a flourishing, growing economy. Right? People's mood is better. You're not feeling like you're getting robbed by tax. You're not worried about what to eat this. You understand that? That's what Trump's trying to do. He's trying to make America great again. No, bro, you just fucking he's a people dumb as fuck, man. Where did you get that? I'm telling you everything right now. Why are you asking dumbass questions? And I'm showing you guys everything in fact. I'm not this isn't made up. This is the fucking treasury.gov website. You understand that? This is not this isn't something this is it. This is real shit. The Federal Reserve being privately owned and the US and keep buying the US debt and keep printing money out of thin air so the US stays forever in debt and it also decreases the value of free cash. This is all real fucking economic fact. The way the corrupt system has been running for hundred years, it's all real. Okay? This is all 100% real. You have to connect the dots because the media, the system that we have been born into, wants us to think that we aren't worth shit, we are dumb, and to just follow orders and do what we are told, right? When you go to school, if you can't learn science in the period of time they want you to learn science, you get an F, and you think you are dumb at science. You will never try to study science again. Is that not true psychologically? Is that not true? Anybody here that has failed something in their schooling most likely will not pursue that again after. Even though they can one even though we probably have lost potential of millions of fascinating minds and fucking brilliant scientists, brilliant artists, brilliant engineers, just because in their youth they were told they weren't good at math or science or this because they didn't learn something fast enough, right? And nobody is dumb. We all have the same brains, right? We all have the same brains. The debt's so large, how are they going to pay? Baz, bro, did I not just talk about negative interest rates and how he's trying to drive interest rates down to zero and negative so they aren't paying interest on their debt? They can pay it back faster. That's how interest rates work. Fucking pay attention, fam. Right? U.S. properties, land, securities, gold as well. They can consider as an asset. Oil, crude oil. They'll call this all assets, right? So from a very young age, our system puts us in a place where you have a bottle cap on your head and it tells you that this is your limit. You cannot if you don't learn science by this period of time and you fail your exam, you are no longer good at science. What do you think that does to a person's mentality? Do you think that kid, that 14, 15-year-old kid ever wants to try to learn science again? Right? Just because this fucking dumbass teacher and dumbass education system told them, oh, you weren't good at this because you didn't learn it fast enough. Did you know the education system was created and built to create factory workers? Why do you think you listen and follow the bells? Why do you think you go there a certain time and leave a certain time? You're only taught to memorize shit, right? You're not taught to use your brain and explore problems and create solutions. You're taught to memorize something and regurgitate it on a test. It's very rare in school where you start actually expanding, and that's very later in the years when you're in your 20s trying to go to university where you have to find something specific to learn. But even that is always limited. But before that time, most people are already capped off because they failed an exam in their youth and they don't think they're ever going to be good at math. How do we know if we didn't give that person the proper learning tools they needed, they could have been the fucking next greatest scientist alive and accelerated our Earth 10 times into the future? You know how many potential geniuses we have lost because of this education system and people feeling like they aren't worth shit or they can't learn shit or they can't do shit, right? The system is meant to make you feel like everything is difficult. This human nature is meant to make you feel and go towards easy and safe choices in life. That's why these corrupt motherfuckers that control our food, they control our media, they make you do everything that's easy, convenient, and also bad for you. What food ads do you see? Just recently you start to see more vegan shit or shit about being more healthy, all that. When I was a kid, it was all fucking fast food ads every time. It was all junk food, fast food ads, shit that would destroy your body and numbs your brain out, right? Nobody wants to do anything difficult, just like the gym. People want to go to the gym and think after a month you can be fit. It doesn't work that way. Things take time and things take effort. But on the other side of fear, on the other side of challenges, on the other side of pushing yourself is growth. And growth leads to success no matter what industry, no matter what field you're in, no matter what skill set it is. On the other side of facing your fears and going over and challenging yourself, right? And going against what people have told you and pushing yourself and going out there and learning it and doing it, that's where growth comes from, right? So now you guys understand how the US is basically just US is basically just a big company that's owned by the Federal Reserve and is basically a client of a bank owned by them and forever in their debt. And Trump is trying to decrease his debt. He's trying to get rid of the Fed. That's why he hates the Feds. That's why he says they need to drive their rates down. They need to go in the negative. He's trying to get their cash rate so high that it's worth nothing and bring that power back into the US Treasury. And then start tackling this. And once you start tackling this and you balance this out, and the U.S. has and also you have to understand, governments don't need to tax citizens. They're only taxing citizens because they owe so much debt to their central banks. Does that make sense? Imagine they didn't owe this much debt to their central banks. Why do they have to tax individuals so much? For what? This can be all balanced out a lot easier and a lot more efficient, right? So you understand that now. That as soon as these central banks are gone, as soon as this debt is relieved or the debt disappears, because think about it, if they can drive the cash value of the Feds to be worthless and the low rates go down, right? Because they have no choice. They have no choice. It's the money supply. They have no choice. It's how the economy works. Trump is now using their corrupt system against them. He's using their system against them. He's driving the economy into these weak points. The China, the U.S., and Putin, they're creating this global uncertainty, right? People are in fear mode. People don't want to work. People don't have jobs right now. The Federal Reserve still needs to make money. They still need to get economy flowing for them to keep rich. So they have no choice to cut rates to try and stimulate the economy. That's why Trudeau's a bitch. Trudeau's a fucking loser. He does nothing. He does nothing for us. That's why Putin's a beast. Because Putin's always been against the central banks and been against that system and against American corruption. That's why China's a beast. They've always been against, they've always, China and Russia have always been against US corruption. They are not against Trump. They like Trump and what his ideals are because what I'm explaining to you guys and how he wants to create a more flourishing economy. If you have the US flourishing, people happy, people working, less individual income tax, no debt owed to a fucking central bank, right? No, the US invades. Okay, now Jalil, I'm gonna talk about this in a minute. So when you have people doing all that, right? Now, don't you think global business will be better? Don't you think global import and export will improve? right? Why do you think the Fed and Trump are always against each other? Okay, now it's not the US that goes to war. It's the central banks that create this pressure to go into war. It's these families, the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers that create this. Why? Because they make money on both sides of the war. And did you know every country that the US went to war with did not have a Rothschild central bank? Iraq, Libya, Iran, they don't have central banks. Iraq never had a central bank. Libya with Gaddafi never had a central bank. They ran shit how Trump wants to do it now, but it was gold. It was gonna be gold backed in Libya. Libya has fucking Gaddafi has shit ton of resources, shit ton of assets. And what did they do? They made him look like a fucking. They made him look like a fucking dictator, a ruthless dictator in the media, and they took him out. What did they do to Saddam? What is was Saddam? Okay, if Saddam did socially incorrect shit to his people, all right. He also did not want to follow the U.S. petrodollar. He did not want to give all this power to the U.S. He wanted to have their own back currency as well, and they had enough oil and supplies and gold to do that as well. What did they do to him? They said he had weapons of mass destruction. They created that scapegoat to go into that country. They put a central bank and a puppet government in there, and now they have control. Exactly. He was about to fuck the US dollar. He's about to bring the value of it down. He's going to have real gold backed, asset backed, where you don't have to do business in the US dollar. People have to understand any country that goes against this, they get taken out because the world's reserve currency is the US dollar from how the Federal Reserve was created first and then other central banks came out to be. Okay? The global business on a universal standpoint is usually done in US currency. All these countries are in debt to their central banks. Most countries are in debt to their central banks that are all privately owned. Okay? So there's no conspiracy here. This is all real numbers. This is all how the world has been running for the last 100 years. You guys have seen the same economic cycles in history repeat itself. You've seen the same bubble pop due to corruption. So Fed get involved. Yeah, Feds. It's not the Fed. It's the guys behind the Fed. It's the guys who run the central banks that make money on the war, that have funded both sides of the war since Napoleon. They funded the Nazis and the other side. They fund every war on both sides and profit off both sides and play the world like it's some fucking video game, moving people around like puppets, keeping their power for generations. The Fed, Jerome Powell, same thing. China's a lot better, but it's still very, very historic. Like it's still run by some of these historical families, you know. But yeah, so now, man, this was a major. There's a lot of information dropped here. The stock market has nothing to do with the budget deficit because, as you can see, the stock market only shows us the health of corporations and how much money they are making, right? So when the stock market is at record highs and you have all these companies like Amazon and Apple making a lot of money, earning a lot more, you would think, in respective, if the system wasn't corrupt, this corporation income tax would be a lot higher because if they pay their respective tax. But no matter if the stock market is doing poor and these companies are doing poor, or if they're doing good, they still avoid corporate income taxes. So it does nothing to actually impact the deficit. There will have to be policies put in place. There have to be policies put in place that ensure there's a certain amount of corporate tax paid. You know what I mean? As per what they actually earn. All right. Didn't have idea of trade at time of Obama. Yeah, Obama's a bitch. They loved the Feds loved Obama. They loved Bush. They loved the Clintons because all those guys did is go to war and fuck shit up and do what the Fed and not do what the Feds wanted, but do what these Rothschilds, these guys that run the central banks wanted. The coronavirus is nothing personal. The coronavirus is actually probably going to help the U.S. in the long term, to be honest. The coronavirus is giving reason for Trump to say to the Feds, cut rates, right? The coronavirus is bringing now, listen how Trump, Putin, and President of China are working together because the coronavirus is the reason all these central banks are cutting rates down, right? They're blaming the coronavirus. So Trump is getting these people down to zero to negative rates because of the coronavirus. And the coronavirus itself is just being overblown in the media. It's not actually like, I don't know anybody with it. Do you guys? No, you probably don't. I don't know anybody with the coronavirus. I hear about it every day. I don't know anybody with it. Think about it. Yes, it is. Because now while this major purge and cleanse is going on in the U.S., if you watch the Fall of Cabal, remember in the Fall of Cabal where they said there will be a blackout period, right? Where everything will be cleaned out just so people don't panic. That's the lockdown right now. That's happening in the U.S. and all these militaries is running through the U.S. Bitcoin isn't anything like I don't understand what that has to do with anything. So now, understanding everything I just said, understanding the coronavirus, understanding all these corrupt politicians from the Clintons to the Bush to the Obamas who did fuck all, understanding all that, all these CEOs. Why do you think all these CEOs are backing down? Because they know Trump's going to make major changes to the corporation income taxes and all that, and they're not going to be able to make as much money. And that they have been running on corruption, and a lot of them will get busted for it. Why do you think they're all fucking? Why do you think they're all fucking stepping down now? All these CEOs. Why do you think all this shit is happening in this domino effect now? And it's no conspiracy. It all starts from where? From the fucking power of the economics behind it. From the power of money and greed and power. Yeah, the media is overblown it to keep the people in fear mode. No, he's not. Trust me. He's changing the way the corporate income tax structure will be. They've already tried to assassinate Trump many times. He might be, but they've tried to assassinate him many times already. It's just not shown in media. And the media isn't, yeah. The media is doing what they do. Yeah, they try to poison him, bomb his plane, a lot of things. All right, JFK was killed by a thing that doesn't exist. No, I don't know what that means. JFK is coming back. He's making a return. JFK Jr. is gonna come back and work with Trump. You guys heard it here first. Saved. He's coming back in like maybe next week, next month. He's coming back. No, if the negative interest rates does not mean all currencies will go down, but the markets may take a heavy reset. Markets may take a heavy hit and reset, but everything will rebound. It's just going to be a major change. If this plan does go through and they can overthrow these central banks and bring it back to being run by the people, run by the government, right? The money controlled by the US Treasury and other countries follow, our markets may change. Our markets liquidity, the way it's run, some regulations around it, all that may change because you're having something that ran our economy for 100 years being completely removed and changed. From Iconic, this website Iconic. All right, guys, I'm gonna get some food, but this shit, like these dots keep connecting, right? Like it's crazy. You guys like the webinar? Was it informal? Or sorry, was it informative? Informal. Yeah, it's crazy how it all ties together, man. It's all running. We're all seeing it happen live. You know what I mean? I'll put it in the Google Drive for the private chat, of course. Boris, I don't know. Boris can be all right. We'll see. Looks like he's a pedo as well, but Trudeau needs to go for Canada. They won't pay you to get loans. You'll have to pay less on your loans, right? Imagine you owed your bank $5,000 at 1.25% interest, but this interest went to the negative. You're actually paying less of the owed amount now per payment or whatever it is. Yeah, Trudeau's a big bitch, man. Fucking fuck Canada. Man, imagine Canada also had somebody that was like Trump and they were working together right now. Holy. But we don't, man. We got fucking Trudeau who's always just doing social political bullshit. Trudeau goes to fucking Trudeau goes on $300,000 vacations with his family on fucking taxpayer money. He's a bitch. All right, guys, I'm gonna save this for the chat, but for everybody else, for anybody who came here from Instagram, shoot me a DM. I don't know, Harmon, man. We're, like, yeah, you can't ask me that question because the way trading and the way the markets have been run by these central banks and how everything has been gone with corruption has been this way for 100 years since before we were born, since before we were trading. So if there's a shift and these central banks no longer have power, maybe it'll be a very smooth transition that will better benefit the rest of the world. I'm not sure. I'm not sure the impact it's going to have on how the markets will change or how volatility will change. You know what I mean? But shoot me a DM of what you guys thought about the webinar on Instagram so people know we got that knowledge and we're woke out here and it's not conspiracy. It's related to yeah, like I can guess that it Harmon that like it might be further regulated. You know what I mean? It might not the currency markets might not be as easily manipulated anymore, and the moves might be less volatile. But who knows? It could be more volatile. Like I have no idea how this all will change because it'll be something new for everybody in the economy to experience. You know what I mean? It's a change of something that's been run since the start early 1900s, well before like even our grandparents. Any like fuck, it'll be crazy if it does. Yeah, this is why. And now everybody used to chirp your boy. Oh, Jeeve. Everybody only used to trade technicals. Jeeve, why do you trade technicals? Why do you fucking look at the fundamentals? Why do you care about this stuff, man? Just look at the chart. Wait for this and fucking buy. I was like, bro, shut the fuck up, because I'm trying to be a next level beast for the rest of my life, and you have to understand what's going on in the markets to do that. You know what I mean? Like these are real world economies. The chart gets painted by real world economic data and money being moved around. It's not like what came first, the fucking chicken or the egg. This is what came first. Fundamentals attack. Fundamentals come first. That's what. It's just common sense. It's not like a fucking riddle. You know what I mean? Yeah, you should do both. Like I don't know why people fight between fundamentals versus technicals. But it's like it's like being a chef and you're fighting over like fucking using a oven or using like a fucking stovetop. You should be able to use both and be an efficient cook. You know what I mean? You should be able to be the best of your abilities. It's like a basketball player saying, "Oh, I'd rather only shoot threes and not go and not drive down the lane." Or a soccer player saying, I only like to do this one move. Like, no, you want to have many skills in your arsenal. You want to be very well rounded. You want to be the best. You want to be the best in your fucking industry, what you're doing, right? All right, all right. Thanks, guys. Woo! How many people? Oh shit, 70 people came. Yeah, I don't know how long this was. We went on for a bit now, but that was a lot of information. But yeah, everything we went everything from how the notes are like, you know what I mean? We'll quickly summarize. We went through how money started from gold and why, how it became labeled as a note just for the convenience of it. That started in China. How gold-backed currency got removed by the Federal Reserve in 1919, and it became Federal Reserve notes and forever debt owed to this foundation or fund in central bank. How the U.S. is forever in debt to them. We looked at the real numbers from the U.S. Treasury and their money in versus money out monthly. This is just February as an example. Then we looked at the yearly to summarize, right? We looked at how Trump, why he was doing the trade war, why he was trying to get more money in via customs and duties, why he's trying to decrease individual income tax. We understand why he's trying to drive rates down to zero and negative, and also why he's always against the Fed. And we understand how these guys are working potentially together now for a better global economy, and how this ties in with everything we've been seeing from the trade war, everything we've been seeing from the coronavirus, how it brings fear to the markets, how fear and optimism runs, the influence on the economy. Like all this stuff we are seeing live in the markets, and we have been tracking since like 2018, and also trading and profiting off of, is just giving us more confidence. It gives us more experience. We have a better understanding of when future events unfold, what the impact will be. We know how, you know what I mean? Yes, Dan. Yes, they'll still be able. They don't. You don't profit now. Come on, Sam. Were you listening the whole time? How do you, nobody profits now? It's all loans. It's an illusion. There will be more jobs. Though, if people are, they're actually, you know what? There might be more regulation, right? In the currency markets, if it does get controlled by the governments globally and all this shit, right? But there might also be more volume and volatility, as there could people might have a lot more money. Like we were saying, if there's less taxes and less interest and all this shit, right? If people have more money, there might be more people investing into the markets, investing into stocks. Because all I know is when people are going to have less income tax, they're going to be happier. Happier people spend more, and then that money goes back into the economy and circulates and creates a better growing economy rather than the way shit is now, where everybody's fucking miserable. But yeah, we talked about everything. Okay, guys, take care.